In this video, I want to talk about neuromuscular blockers. Neuromuscular blockers are used in anesthesiology for muscle paralysis. And they come in two flavors. We have NM antagonists, things like tubocurarine or nowadays vecuronium, and NM agonists, things like succinylcholine. Now, they are both considered neuromuscular blockers, which seems to be a little bit confusing because we are talking here about an NM antagonist and an NM agonist having kind of the same effect, being used for muscle relaxation, for muscle paralysis. So where are NM receptors found? These are ligand-gated ion channels, and they are found on the skeletal muscle. So this is the somatic nervous system with a one motor neuron system coming from the CNS, releasing acetylcholine into the neuromuscular junction on skeletal muscle. And that's where we find the NM receptors. So now we have to understand how an NM antagonist can do the same thing than an NM agonist or have the same effect. For an NM antagonist, it's easy to understand. Well, they just antagonize this receptor there, they block it. So acetylcholine cannot facilitate any muscle contractions anymore, so you get paralysis of your muscle. And that's an NM antagonist. But what does succinylcholine do? Succinylcholine is an NM agonist, so it binds to the NM receptor and also has some efficacy. It is actually leading to muscle contractions, some fasciculations, because it activates the receptor. But what happens then? Now, two things are important to understand what really happens as an effect. Number one, succinylcholine is basically not a substrate for cholinesterase. So it just sits there. It is acting at the receptor and cannot be degraded. Number two, what is also happening is that once the NM receptor gets activated, it's going to lead to a activation of voltage-gated sodium channels. And the voltage-gated sodium channels, if you remember, always cycle in these three stages. So they become activated, but then they become inactivated. And they only can get back to the resting stage once repolarization is happening. But repolarization cannot happen now because it is not going to go away. It's sustained. So you basically send a couple of these voltage-gated sodium channels in the inactivated state, and that's where they're stuck. They're stuck, and succinylcholine is not a substrate for cholinesterase. So therefore, they just hang on there and lead to what is called a depolarization blockade. So that's why we're going to get also muscle paralysis with a NM agonist like succinylcholine. This concludes the video on neuromuscular blockers.